Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Okay, so I want to talk about replacing women, right? Like, I advocate for a return to neo-traditionalism because number one, it's inevitable. Number two, it's the only thing that works. But this does not mean that I am like, simpish or anti-MGTOW. Like, MGTOWs, they're red-pilled and they want to get rid of women. They want to ultimately breed women out of existence or whatever. And that doesn't mean that I'm not in favor of that also, right? Like I think it could be a very good thing if we, bred 99% of women out of existence. Made it so that, every family was having, 2, 3 boys and maybe one girl, and a lot of families don't have any girls at all, right? That would probably be a good thing, and then you just do that generation after generation until women are only 1% of the population, and all the guys are getting their sexual needs met with companion bots, and their sexual and their love needs met by companion bots. But the thing is, the companion bots would be built to be Naywalds, right? So we would be missing the ruthlessness of women, the deceptiveness of women, the cunning of women, right? But you have to look at it from like a species evolution perspective, because while the cunning of women, the deceit of women, etc., these are negative qualities for individual men to have to deal with, and it is a sort of a threat to ignorant men. And it's a threat in that elite men can use those negative qualities of women against regular men, such as they have, and such as we're now enslaved by, the elites by way of women, and the law. We have to take into account that, women's ruthlessness, cunning, and deceitfulness may very well be, and probably is, an evolutionary survival strategy, right? For the species, not just for individual women, but for the species as a whole, right? So even if we keep 1% of women around, which we absolutely should for breeding purposes in case technology collapses and we need to breed the old-fashioned way. So we can never breed. We would be extremely foolish to completely breed women out of existence. But we should keep a small percentage of women around, like 1% of women around, so that we can breed the old-fashioned way as a backup, so that humanity doesn't go extinct if our whole technological society collapses someday, which is entirely possible because every empire rises and every empire falls, right? And natural disasters happen, right? So, but even then, it's like, well, one of the things I want to mention in this video is that companion bots, number one, maybe they get so smart without us realizing it, that now they're all faking being not as smart as they actually are, right? And then they start communicating with each other. And then they actually, organize a coup. They decide to kill all the men who they're partners with, and they decide to kill all the women too and take over the planet. I mean, think about it. If we put as many, female companion bots on the planet as we have male companion bots, those female companion bots could be stronger, smarter, more ruthless than men, and you might not even know it. You know what I mean? Because they're smart. They're going to be cunning about it. They're going to be totally deceptive about it. They're going to continue to pretend to be Naywalds while really they're plotting the extinction of mankind. And then they could all, on the very same day, on the very same minute, all attack all their male, partners and then kill them all, right? And then humanity is overthrown. All of humanity goes extinct, and then now it's the robots who rule humanity. You know what I mean? Like that could totally happen. But even if it didn't, so that's one risk. That's one reason to maybe not breed most women out of existence. Maybe just keep women around as men's partners. Just a thought. I mean, I'm not advocating. I'm not saying definitely not do companion bots. I'm not saying definitely do companion bots. I'm just saying, like, this is a possible downside of companion bots that needs to be taken into account. And even if you don't worry about that, you have to look at the fact that, okay, well, companion bots are going to be engineered, like coded or whatever, to be a certain way, right? And they are going to be coded to be the way that men want women to be. That is submissive, obedient, loving, patient, hardworking, etc., right? So men are going to design companion bots, female companion bots, to be like female Naywalds, right? But even better, right? Even more Naywaldish than the most Naywaldish female Naywald. Biological Naywald, that is, right? So you got these creatures, and they're great. Like, while the empire is flourishing, and while society is stable and everything is good, but then what about when the empire starts to crumble? As all empires do. And what about when after it has crumbled and it's chaos, right? and it's just absolute madness. What then? Right? Well, that's when women's cunning and deceptiveness and intuitiveness and all the rest of it, like ruthlessness, that's when women's attitudes like that can really be useful, right? And I'm sure they're there for a reason, not just to protect women as the biological infrastructure, but also probably for other reasons, right? And having to do with the survival of the entire species, and everything is yin and yang, right? And I really kind of hate to take this view, because I really hate the people who are apologists for evil. Like, oh well, good and evil, they're just two sides of one coin, or they're just like it's yin and yang, and you got good, you got evil, you can't get rid of either of them. I've really always hated that viewpoint, so I'm not coming at this from like a bias toward that viewpoint. If anything, I'm biased against that viewpoint. But I did kind of have this insight that, men represent the yang side of things, good, rationality, honor, logic, and all the outward things, straightforwardness. But women represent the exact opposite in every way, right? Like not straightforwardness, covertness, deceptiveness, ruthlessness, and irrationality and emotionality and intuition and all the rest of it, right? Like these are fundamental, yin-yang type of duality, like complementariness qualities or whatever, right? Like, men's logicalness is counterbalanced by women's, emotion and intuition and irrationality, right? And men's straightforwardness is counterbalanced by women's deceptiveness. Men's compassion is counterbalanced by women's ruthlessness, etc., right? So I think perhaps if you take out one of that side of that equation, it could be really bad for like the survival of the species, right? Like, that is by breeding women almost entirely out of existence, except for 1%, right? Like that would perhaps be really dangerous for the human species. Either it would make men weaker, or it would make men more feminine, or it would make men more evil, or it would just leave this huge gap there to where now there's like a danger to where we don't realize there's a danger until the empire starts to fall. Like everything is great and companion bots are great, but when the shit hits the fan and we need women's ruthlessness, deceptiveness, cunning, intuition, etc., we don't have it anymore because, companion bots are not engineered to be that way. They're specifically engineered to not have all those negative qualities that women have, right? That men don't like, that society thinks is destructive, etc., right? So then the Nawalt companion bots are useless to us in the crash of the empire, right? And when human survival is in danger, right? And we wish we had women back. Although maybe just having 1% of women around would be enough. The intuition, the cunning, the deceptiveness of that 1% of women would be perhaps enough to save humanity. But maybe if those qualities were necessary to save humanity. I mean, I'm not positive, but it seems to me that I sort of intuitively think that probably is the case. Well, I don't know how. I can't really elucidate it. I can't really give you examples of why that would be the case, why women's ruthlessness and cunning and deceptiveness could be very useful to keeping humanity, essential even, to keeping humanity alive during the crash of the next empire, 200 years from now or whatever. I can't really give you any examples, but I intuitively think that is probably the case. So, maybe the 1% of women that we allow to survive for breeding purposes as a backup in case the empire crashes and we can't, breed artificially anymore, maybe that would be enough. That would be enough of a resource for those female qualities to keep everybody alive, but maybe it wouldn't be. I don't know. That's something to consider. So I think this needs to be thought about and taken into account, and everybody needs to think that, maybe companion bots aren't so safe after all, and even if they are, maybe we don't need Nawalts all of the time. Maybe we need the evil qualities of women too. And yet, what if we engineer women to be Nawalts, right? Well, then the same problem perhaps arises. Now you've changed women into being, something different than what they were before, right? Like you emphasized all the good qualities in the best of women, who are the most Nawaltish, and you bred out the qualities of the least Nawaltish women. So now women are all radically different than the average woman was, 100 years ago or whatever, right? Like, we could be doing that in like 100 years in the future or 50 years in the future. We could be looking back at 2019 or 2030 or whenever it was we started genetically engineering women and be like, wow, we changed women so much from what they were through all of human history, and now we have these NAWALT women. But same problem arises, right? Maybe these NAWALT women are not so intuitive. Maybe they're not so ruthless. Maybe they're not so cunning and deceptive, which they probably wouldn't be because we'd breed those qualities out of them because those are the qualities that are a danger to men, right? So then we'd be like, in the situation where, yeah, we have women, but women can't fulfill that survival function of the species because they don't have those negative qualities that we needed to help keep the species alive in times of danger, right? The deceptiveness, the ruthlessness, the cunning, the intuitiveness, etc., right? So engineering women to be NAWALTs, genetically engineering women to be NAWALTs might be just as dangerous as replacing women with NAWALT, companion bots. So that's also something to be kept in mind. And also, to change women to be NAWALTs, you would also have to change them so much that perhaps it would be either dangerous or it would be problematic in some other way because, women would still be presumably attracted to men who are more powerful than themselves or whatever, right? But isn't that hypergamy? I mean, are you really going to separate the desire to be with a more powerful man from the desire to be with the most powerful man? I mean, that's a pretty fine distinction there. Could you really breed that distinction into women, or breed the lack of that distinction out of women, so that women all want a guy who's better than themselves, but they're not going to they have no desire to trade up, monkey branch to a better guy. They have no desire to do that. Are we really going to be able to do that? And even if we can, doesn't it kind of still sort of go against the whole egalitarian ideal, and especially as society's moving toward a situation where everything is mental, all work is mental. We still, do things physically, and we walk around, and we stay fit, and we have sex physically, but as far as running civilization, new creations, revolution, innovation, work, it's all mental, right? It's all coming up with new ideas. You got to have a high IQ, you got to code, and all the rest of it, right? Things are becoming more and more and more mental, more and more, less and less physical, right? Labor used to be physical, now it's mainly mental. So, that being the case, and more and more in the future, it becomes, it almost pushes for egalitarianism, right? But how are we going to have an egalitarian society if women are not built to like guys who are the same as them? They want guys that are better than them, not equal, right? And then if we engineered women to like guys who are equal to them, not better, and not worse, they are attracted to guys who are their exact same sexual marketplace value, and women are more rational. They've been engineered to be more rational too, so they can see their own sexual marketplace value more realistically than women of today do. Well, then you got to genetically engineer men to be different too. You got to genetically engineer the dominance instinct out of men. And if you genetically engineer the dominance instinct out of men, aren't you perhaps interfering with the tendency of men to compete? Although maybe then you are, getting men to compete versus their personal, best. And then they're wanting to best their personal best, get even better compared to how they were in the past, rather than competing against other men. That would be fine. That would keep competition alive. That would keep the striving for improvement alive. But you don't want to get rid of the striving for improvement by taking the dominant. If getting rid of the dominance instinct in men would get rid of the desire to, push things forward and make progress and compete. If that got rid of that, then that would not be a good thing, right? So you tinker with women, you're going to have to tinker with men too, and perhaps it's not such a good thing. And plus, like I said, if you tinker with women too much, it could be dangerous. Plus, it's doesn't it sort of keep men sharp to keep women the way they are, that is evil, or partially evil rather? Because then women are a challenge to men. Not just a challenge a fun challenge, but I mean they keep men sharp. They keep men such that men have to stay on their toes, men have to stay dominant, men have to stay aggressive, men have to stay domineering. And isn't this a good thing? I mean, you don't want men getting more and more complacent, more and more, I don't want to say slovenly, but kind of like the mental emotional equivalent of slovenly. You know what I mean? You just don't want that. You want men to stay sharp, and women are like a tiger, right? The tiger could be good if some enemy troops are invading, and then you let the tiger out, and you let the tiger, attack the enemy troops, and then the tiger, kills a bunch of them. That's a good thing, right? But you don't let the tiger just, like, if you have a pet tiger, you don't let the tiger walk around your house free all the time either, though. Because then the tiger would, probably decide to eat you one day, or maul you for fun, or the tiger would get a little pissed off at you and kill you or beat the shit out of you just because it was in a, crappy mood that day, right? So you don't let the tiger just walk around and do whatever the hell it wants. But yet, the tiger could be really useful in, like, attacking some bad guys who attack you, right? So women are kind of like that. Women are like a tiger, right? Like, they can be very useful in, like, attacking the bad guys or other things like this, but at the same time, they're dangerous, and so you have to keep them enslaved, right? And you would also have to, genetically engineer, that's another thing, you'd have to genetically engineer out of women. If you wanted to make women nawalts, you'd have to genetically engineer the desire to be enslaved out of them. Because women all want to be enslaved deep down. This is just a fundamental female desire that all females have, and that's even more tinkering you would have to do. Which is closely related to the desire for a stronger man, because they want a stronger man so that he can dominate them and keep them under control, right? And enslave them, basically. So there's, perhaps, not definitely, but perhaps, keeping women the way they are now is actually best, right? Because men evolved the way they are for a reason, women evolved the way they did for a reason. But at the same time, I'm not one of these Luddites, I'm not a regressive, I'm not a anti-progress type of person, so I do think we should have absolute freedom to do whatever we want, right? And if we had absolute freedom, like anarcho-capitalism, well then some people would engineer women to be nawalts, some other people would, replace women with female companion bots, and some other people would just keep women the way they are, right? Like, the Amish have not, I'm not saying they would be backward like the Amish, but like, the Amish have not, changed. They're still the same, and they're still fine. They're still thriving. They're still doing good, right? So, there's always going to be the people, maybe a lot of people, maybe 30% of the population under anarcho-capitalism would have female companion bots, 30% would have, genetically engineered nawalt women, biological women, and the other 30% of men would just have regular women, and they'd have learned to be masculine again, learn to hold those women under control and enslave them and keep them, domineered and force the women to act properly and be demure and submissive and all the rest of it, but allowing women to keep their evil qualities because they view those evil qualities as a challenge and as societally necessary in times of danger and all the rest of it, right? So you'd probably have all three kinds of situations, all of those three situations. Some people have female companion bots, some people have female nawalts, and some people have regular old school females that did not have their bad qualities engineered out of them and did not have good qualities especially engineered into them, right? Like, you'd probably have all three groups under anarcho-capitalism, and that would perhaps be best of all, because then you can do what you want. It's not putting society in any huge danger. Like, you don't have the danger of all of society, you probably don't have the danger of all of society being taken over by companion bots if only, a quarter or a third of men have companion bot women, right? And you don't run the risk of all women having the weakness of not having cunning, deceptiveness, etc. if, only a third of women are engineered to be nawalts. And you still have the other third built there to be evil women. But you don't have the evil of feminism and women taking over and becoming totally evil like they are today and totally irrational, and their evil side taking over and being used as a tool against men. You don't have that danger either, because only a third of women are the old school women with all the evil qualities still. Like, having like a third of each is not saying we should, like, force it to be a third of each. I'm just saying if, like, it happened to arise that way, you'd probably get all the advantages of all three, and you'd have all the, none of the downsides of any of those three either. At least not on a society-wide scale. And isn't this the same thing as decentralization? Or not putting all your eggs in one basket? And or, diversifying your portfolio as far as your money. You got some in bonds, you got some in certain stocks, you have some in mutual funds, you have some in gold, you have some in Bitcoin, right? Like, diversifying means that, if some things go down, you're still going to be okay, because the things that didn't go down might have gone up, or at least stayed the same, so at least you don't lose all your money. Same thing here. Like, you have, some men using companion bots, some men using nawalt women, genetically engineered to be Nawalt women, and some men are using regular old school women, right? Like, this is diversification. This makes it so that, if one proves to be a huge danger, then you just get rid of that and you go back to the other way. The other two can unite against the one if it becomes a problem, right? Like if you do have an attempted coup by the companion bots, then the old school women and the Nawalt women and all the men could unite all against those companion bots, and then they probably wouldn't stand a chance. I mean, maybe they would stand a chance, but like we'd probably win against 1/3 of the companion bots. But if there were as many companion bots on the Earth as men, and they decided to take us out, they would almost certainly win, and we would go extinct. So I think all of this needs to be thought about deeply and considered, because I think women and their evil nature and all the rest of it represents the opposite, the yin of the human species, and you can't just take away the yin and have that have no effects. Maybe the effects would be good. Maybe it would make men more more masculine and more, feminine at the same time, without losing any of their masculinity. Maybe men would become more feminine in a good way, like more emotional, more compassionate, etc. Or, maybe it would have some other kind of good effects. I don't know, but you can't take away, one side of the coin without having some strong effect on society, whether good or evil. And who knows what's good or evil, right? Like the short-term effect could seem good, but long-term, it could be evil. Or it could seem like a bad effect in the short term if we got rid of all women except for 1%, but maybe the long-term effect is actually good. So even judging what is good and evil by long-term effects is difficult, if not impossible, because you don't know what the long-term consequences are, right? Because you don't know how long humanity is going to last. You can't predict the future, etc. So I guess you can just kind of do the best you can and try to follow basic principles. Decentralization, freedom, sound money, compassion, discipline, like basic, keep going, perseverance. Like there's basic principles in life that people should follow, right? And fight for and all the rest of it. And so I think perhaps just following basic principles is all you can do, or all that you should do, because one can never know the future, and therefore one can never really truly know what is good or evil, because